Welcome, everyone, to this episode of Build America, the construction industry podcast that's capturing and sharing the very heartbeat of construction, and in this case, talent acquisition and retention. I'm Kerry Smith, your host, and I'm also owner of Construction News and Review magazine. We are in for a treat in this installment in our focus on talent acquisition this month because we have with us Brian Conway, who's principal recruitment consultant at LVI Associates. And Brian, it's great to have you with us today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Oh, absolutely. Glad you could carve out the time. And the topic that we're going to hone in on today is sort of future trends in construction recruiting as it becomes more and more difficult to find and keep the best people for construction companies. I know, Brian, we're glad you're going to share with us some of technology is feeding into the process and other ways that companies just like LVI are continuing to stay above the curve and in their pipelines and their methods of finding great people. So appreciate you being with us today.
Absolutely.
We'll just jump into the first question I had for you was just, I've been talking to a lot of recruiters the past few months, and they talk about technology, certainly not replacing the in-person or virtual interview, but just in terms of culling through candidates and other things. Would you agree that, technology in whatever form is going to continue to play a pretty prominent role in this whole talent process?
100%. Yeah, I would say it's only becoming more relevant as technology evolves, recruitment evolves essentially. And in a lot of ways, there's always pros and cons when you see advances in technology. You have to be cautious of certain things. But yeah, our goal internally has been to make sure that we're using technology in the best ways, finding ways that our data can essentially help us work more efficiently.
That makes sense. And what would be an example of where in the process that technology comes in? Is it with when you're just looking for applicants from a huge pool, or does it follow different forms of assist you all the way through the process?
Yeah, honestly, I would say every step of the way. So even from the first step of sourcing candidates or even finding new jobs and new clients, in a lot of ways, again, just AI being more prevalent now. That's one thing that we've seen help a lot in terms of, again, just finding new candidates. There's new AI features on basically every platform, including LinkedIn. Our internal IT team has been implementing some new AI strategies to help us, search more efficiently and whatnot, and basically do the groundwork of some of the research that we might have to take a bit deeper into elsewhere or otherwise. And then, yeah, even when it comes to drafting, emails or responses, things like that, candidate write-ups, AI is a tool there that, again, we use. We can't rely on it fully. We still want to make sure like we're presenting ourselves in a personal manner and kind of, you don't want to script everything through AI, but at the same time, again, there's a lot of tools that we use just at that first step to source. And then again, every step of the way, a real focus for us recently has been, again, looking at our data in ways that actually helps us, as opposed to kind of spending too much time just looking at, we can see basically every stat of recording essentially what we're doing throughout the day and ways to look at our activity. So one thing, for example, that we've been looking at a lot is speed, which is a measure that we haven't really looked at in the past. So for example, if we're pulling a job, let's say it's Monday, how long is it taking us to get our first resume down? How long is it taking us to get 2 or 3 resumes down? How long is it then taking to book an interview? And then we can look at every step from there, even from pulling the job to the placement. And a big focus for us is if we can shorten that time frame and find ways to work more efficiently, obviously a lot more jobs that can be worked, a lot more resumes that can be out, and more money to be made.
I would think, especially too, in the continual scarcity for good talent, skilled talent in the construction trades, if you can't shorten that window, someone else might get them, right? Before you
100%.
do.
You got to be the first ones.
That's awesome. So how does that work when I don't want to make you give away any of your secret sauce or anything, but with AI and other technologies, how do you just create prompts on what you're looking for? Because I wonder how much of it is you're looking for someone whose skills match, but then there's that whole people soft skills factor too, right? Is that kind of all weighed into that process?
Yeah, that's the way we have to think about it when navigating the new AI features. A lot of it is touch and go. For example, I might type in to Copilot or ChatGPT, find companies that are similar to this one in this area that have postings for this sort of job. And again, it's not always dead on. It's not always super accurate, but it might show up a company that maybe you haven't heard of before, or they haven't reached out to a bunch, kind of reminders there. And then same thing with, sourcing candidates. Like you mentioned, AI, sometimes a keyword goes in and gives you things that you weren't looking for, which again, maybe opens your eyes to a candidate that didn't show up in a previous search, or gives you an idea for a keyword for a new search. But again, you are always playing around with it and seeing which skills or which keyword return what results, and going from there, I'd say.
Yeah, that's fascinating to me because before that, was it in the old days of a year and a half ago or whatever, was it more just like you mentioned LinkedIn without the AI feature, was more just you're trying to narrow the net by, I don't know, geographical perimeters or skills, or what was it like before then? It must have been a lot more cumbersome how you even begin to search for a candidate for a company.
I would say, I guess me personally, I actually tend to, on LinkedIn, for example, I'll search more frequently with those, I guess, more traditional filters and whatnot, as opposed to the AI. Like you can go in and type up an AI prompt in LinkedIn. And again, I find that it's maybe not quite there yet with the technology of, or maybe honestly, to be clear, like a lot of candidates, especially in construction, aren't on LinkedIn. And if they are, they might have a very bare profile. It literally might just be their name, maybe a company on there or a job title. So those AI searches aren't super useful for someone like that who, when they don't list those skills or a certain
Right.
category or tag, they might not show up in those AI searches. So that's why something as simple as a location or even a zip code with kind of parameter around it will encapsulate a lot of people from there. And then I like to narrow down actually by keywords, because, or even companies, to be honest, if you are headhunting a specific company, or maybe you want to see someone that previously worked at a company that you know has a good reputation, or on the flip side, you've heard of something negative going on, you want to see who's maybe looking to leave that company, things like that, I have found more useful so far than utilizing AI, like very commonly on LinkedIn.
That makes sense because I didn't think about that, but you're exactly right. Especially like on maybe a project manager would have a LinkedIn profile, but maybe a carpenter wouldn't, or
Right.
a laborer. So that makes a lot of sense. Where do you think, I guess, I'm wondering, I have this question here about remote flex work options. Do you do much of that type of position structure recruiting for construction companies? Because I wondered if they're largely an in-person kind of client. But if you do, does that kind of change where and who you're looking for if remote is in the picture or hybrid?
100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
if you asked me a year ago, I don't think I had any remote roles, and maybe that's because of the industry. I was focusing more specifically on heavy civil construction, and then in November, I just happened to switch over to transmission distribution, more electrical construction, and that was just, I got promoted and building out this new team in this space. There was the opportunity there, but yeah, I would say, like I said, I didn't have any really remote roles in the civil side, and then now with T&D, we actually do come across it more, and I know the guys that sit around me are, a lot of them do the heavy civil work as well. And I would say it's become more prevalent for sure. Even actually yesterday, a client asked that, they need a remote estimator. When there are those capabilities to work hybrid or remote, it typically is with an estimator. Sometimes project management as well, especially if we're working for more of a construction engineering firm, they tend to have more flexibilities. We see a lot more with our engineering teams have those sorts of capabilities, but for obvious reasons. And again, it just goes back to the role. You're never really going to come across a superintendent that is like, oh yeah, I need to work hybrid, because it's the nature of the job. You got to be on site.
Right.
Yeah, I would say it's not been it's not been very hindering, but it's honestly really helpful when a client comes to us with that flexibility, because there are candidates nowadays who say, again, for example, estimators, I will only work a remote role. So a lot of times we'll come across those candidates and honestly not really have anything for them. If we don't have, even if it's a job that's 15 minutes away from them, they might say, I don't want to commute anymore. I've been
Well,
working remote for years and I'm not going back. So it's something that, yeah, we've come across that I probably wouldn't have come across before COVID.
wow. We're writing a couple pieces on recruiting and retaining Gen Z generation, how different it is from those of us who are old, who were hired different ways and were assumed we still had a job, and everybody thought we were good if we were still there, rather than a lot of
Right.
other kudos and support along the way. And I wondered if, as you recruit future generations, if you're going to need to be in the space they're in with technology and data driven strategies. I would think, is that, are you on the cusp of a continually changing as technology advances, how you're bringing people in?
It's definitely possible. Yeah. Again, especially back to those roles that arguably can be done from home or hybrid or fully remote, whatever it is. There obviously is a big gap right now between older talent and younger talent, especially in construction. And filling that gap, everyone's looking for that unicorn of 5 to 10 years experience, has a super long career ahead, but at the same time has really solid experience under their belt. So to accommodate to that younger generation, if they are coming up with those expectations and finding those opportunities that are offering those things, it might become something to consider for a lot more contractors that maybe haven't considered it previously.
Sure. Answered. I wondered if I don't know if you all would really see the retention side of the business as much, or if it's almost more you see. Do you use any particular technologies in helping construction clients hold on to people, or are you more on the placement side?
Yeah, definitely after our placements, one thing that we do to ensure that our candidates are at least staying through our rebate periods and then beyond that, we want to make sure it's a good fit. We want repeat business and not just the one-off placements. So we have a pretty meticulous post-placement care kind of methodology of where we're checking in with the candidate at least once a week, just making sure everything's going well, seeing if they do have any issues or hesitations, anything like that, as soon as they are placed, and then a few months after that. And so when things do come up, we're able to communicate that with the client. Sometimes maybe they just want to be on a different team or a different project or whatever it is. A lot of those things can be ironed out. And then, yeah, so that's honestly a good insight into kind of retention and seeing what things that a company can do from the get-go to make sure their employees are satisfied after being hired. And then, yeah, we pick up along the way a lot of bits of, we like to call it gossip. If companies aren't doing the right things to retain employees, we usually know about it because we'll see their high turnover of people open to work on LinkedIn from the same company. So that's something where we'll dig in and try to see what's going on at that company.
Yeah, but like you said, your best sources maybe are the people who are
100%.
leaving. So you
And
can
yeah, really just anyone we can get on the phone, like every conversation, there's so much to get out of. So we're always looking for the bits of leads and gossip of is what we always say. Even for a candidate that's not on the market or is happy at their company, they probably know, someone down the street is not happy at their job and they might be looking.
I see. Read an article yesterday and it talked about passive candidates. And I wondered, and I read the article and now I'm like, I don't know that I really have cleared in my head what an active candidate makes sense to me. Somebody who's got their resume out there and they're looking, but
Right.
what's a passive candidate? Do you work with them as well?
100%. And they are probably, believe it or not, the majority of the candidates we work with and end up placing. Definitely are. So the active ones are, sometimes they're great to come across. You might come in on a Monday and see the resume on Indeed, but so does every other hiring manager or every other HR. So their resume is going around pretty quickly. And again, even our clients or other contractors might be reaching out directly. With a passive candidate, they might not have themselves open to work on LinkedIn. They might not even have an updated resume. They might not have a resume at all. But obviously, there are different ways for us to find people's informations. And we do obviously a lot of cold calls. So if you get someone on the phone that isn't really looking, but maybe they're enticed to hear what you have to say and they're willing to have a conversation. Maybe the more you talk, they have a couple of grievances with their company that they don't maybe want to fully admit. Things like that are always there. And what I like to say to candidates is there really is no harm in seeing where the conversation can go. All of our processes and the resumes we send out to clients are legally confidential. You don't have to worry about your current employer finding out. And from there, I like to say to them as well, that gives you, a good opportunity working through myself as a resource to see what's out there without risking your current job. And there might be something out there that you didn't know was there. So it can't hurt to look.
That's a great point. I'm so appreciating that you defined that term passive candidate. And it makes sense to me, especially seems like after or during COVID, I can't believe that was 5 years ago, but people, even if they weren't conscious of it, I think we were evaluating quality of life and what we wanted out of work because it morphed so much. So I could see where,
Right.
especially since then, it's probably a rich pool of potential candidates and how rewarding if it's someone and how I want to say almost luxurious for them if they're really not having to look, but you find them a company that meets even more goals than the one they're at.
Right.
How serendipitous is that?
Definitely. Yeah.
That's
I like to think of
awesome.
it that way.
I've so enjoyed learning from you. I feel bad that 20 minutes goes by so quickly, Brian, but we've learned a ton today on just technology and talent pools and finding the best people and keeping them with Brian Conway, who is Principal Recruitment Consultant at LVI Associates. And Brian, it's been such a pleasure. I hope you'll come back on Build America.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure as well.